your hands on top of your head.
Well, I didn't.
Now! Never jam. Here comes the jam. Getting down with the truth. The only way he knows how to. Girls all up with his name. We call him the chief. You're damn right. He's gonna get that sucker. Go and track down the truth. You know what a track down the truth. You know what they call him. We call him the chief. You're damn right we do.
And I'll bet your mother had a loud bark.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with the Chief on YouTube. You can catch us every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Pop Culture Minefield's Rumble channel and their YouTube fave. They also, I think they throw this on their Facebook page as well. So hey, listen, the holiday season is here. Tomorrow I will be serving food at the Los Angeles Mission. Now, if you've been watching the show, you know that I am a supporter of the Los Angeles Mission. And tomorrow is their big day. Go to the losangelesmission.org. I mean, I know not everybody can go down there and serve. Not everybody can go down there and volunteer. But you know what? Everybody can make a $25 donation to help the men and women who are struggling on the streets with addiction, mental health issues, and a variety of other things going on. And, you know, the thing about the Los Angeles Mission, it does have a faith-based element, but also tends to use practices that have a greater likelihood of success. I would hope local government would start paying attention to these folks, but, you know, they are stuck in mediocrity. You know, the problem with government sometimes is mediocrity becomes acceptable. And so they've been just, you know, what was happened yesterday, even though it was mediocre, is okay with today because everybody wants certainty in what's going to happen with their career. But, you know, the Los Angeles Mission, they want to focus on successes. They focus on long-term recovery. They have 6 to 12-month programs to deal with all of the needs of the homeless, the multiple needs that they might have, so they can reintroduce them into society to become productive members of society. Unfortunately, I think government is just kind of meeting the immediate needs and they just haven't crossed the Rubicon of being successful in long-term care. So, but tomorrow we will be serving a Thanksgiving meal to the folks in the homeless on Skid Row, and generally we serve about 1,500 meals, maybe 2,000 meals, depends on what it looks like and if it rains, you know. But here's the deal. They use these programs like this to get people in the door. They provide them with some other services other than just a meal. They'll have some basic clothing items, and they'll start that conversation to see if they can get some folks who are ready to recover and get off the street. It really is a good program. So bring up the losangelesmission.org and make a donation today so you can do your good deed in this holiday season. So happy Thanksgiving to everybody. So we're just a couple days away from Turkey Day. I hope everybody's got some great plans. And we are doing the Die Hard series. I did Die Hard last week, and I'm going to do Die Hard 2, and I think next week I'm going to do Die Hard 3, just because you know, I'm gonna probably be dark on you know, Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, and we'll just replay some of these Hollywood themed movies. Now, one of the other reasons why I wanted to do Die Hard is I actually saw Bruce Willis. I was working a movie job, saw him. I wanted to check his eyes to see if maybe there was some usage going on, if you know what I mean. But I knew that working a movie job as a deputy sheriff, young deputy sheriff in the 80s, if I did that, I would never work another movie job again. But, you know, when you're active in Hollywood and you work in Hollywood, you see these guys in and around the Sunset Strip. They're all over the place. And Bruce Willis was one of those guys that was active in the 80s and 90s. And so I really want to do him. And I like some of the actors in the show. I mean, we have a U.S. Senator that's in this movie. Really cool stuff, right? But hey, on my other stuff, I do have my Briefing with the Chief show going every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's on KJRadioDB.com. That is KJRA Radio. You can also catch us on Rumble and KJRA's Facebook page and their Twitter feed. Tomorrow, I'm going to address one of the J6ers. What happened to him? How he got put on the no-fly list by being prompted, the FBI being prompted by the Southern Poverty Law Center, which has become less of a monitoring of hate groups, but more of a targeting of anybody that disagrees with them. And he's got an interesting story. And he was my first guest. And then I went over another one of the lawsuits involving P. Diddy. Really disgusting stuff with P. Diddy. On that show, I've committed to going and finding as many of the lawsuits as I can. Many are being filed in New York, printing them out and reading them so you can hear the truth. Because on that show, I want to make sure we're covering and talking about things that the mainstream media doesn't talk about or that they hide. And I think the mainstream media knew and didn't do anything. So tune into my show tomorrow on KJDB.com, Briefing with the Chief. You can also go to KJDB.com, Briefing with the Chief, to my show and host page, and you can find all the audio versions of my show, and you can listen to my show. So, hey, let's get it. So today's show, we're going to do Die Hard 2. Let's bring my guest on. I only have one law enforcement guest, so we're gonna have Martine step in too as a second guest because it has some South American themes going on in this movie. But my guest from law enforcement, retired Sergeant Danny Coon from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. He's been on both my shows in the past, but it's been a while since he's been on the show. Welcome, Danny, back to the show.
No, thank you, Pat. It's great to see you again, and I appreciate being back. And just to throw a shout out on your donations to the mission. Last year, I raised over $500 for your mission as a birthday request, and my birthday is in October, so it helped out greatly for the November-December season. So I'd urge anybody who's listening, if you do birthday requests on Facebook, give a look at the Los Angeles mission because it is worthwhile and people will donate to it. So, but again, Pat, it's great to be back and great to see you again.
Hey, why don't you plug you do some stuff regarding post-traumatic stress with law enforcement, and you got your own little efforts that you focus on. You want to talk a little bit about that before we get in the movie?
Certainly. A couple of years ago, I got involved in the suicide watch for law enforcement and first responders. I learned that overall, every year, with the exception of this year, more first responders, firefighters, medics, and cops died by suicide than in the line of duty. In fact, in law enforcement, suicide is the number one killer. Within the firefighters, suicide and heart disease are the top killers instead of line of duty deaths. So health and wellness and suicide prevention and suicide awareness is something I blog about. I have a blog on my website is bulletprooffirstresponder.com, and I blog monthly or mostly monthly on issues involving law enforcement, firefighters, and medics, and post-traumatic stress. I wrote a couple blogs on sleep deprivation and cardiac disease. So it's very interesting. So visit bulletprooffirstresponder.com. I also wrote the book Broken, Understanding the Effects of Post-Traumatic Stress. It is on Amazon. And if you go to Amazon and just type my name in the search bar, the book will show up. And again, it's Broken, Understanding the Effects of Post-Traumatic Stress. It's a faith-based book, but it's very relevant to what we see and do every day.
And with all the negativity of law enforcement these days, that's one of the prerequisites, I guess, or it adds on to the stress and frustration of law enforcement, and which leads them to a higher level of suicides as well. So it's relevant for if you're in law enforcement, know somebody in law enforcement, it's a good stocking stuffer. So buy it and stick it in their stocking. Hey, welcome to the show. It's Vin Ziegler and Slasher Fred. Welcome back, and FKAHC 2005. Thank you.
Better known as Tim.
As Tim? Okay.
Yes.
I was going to say that's a long one to read. I think maybe he's sending me a message there, and I don't know if I want to acknowledge the message, but yes, hail to the chief. Thank you for joining the show. Let's do Slasher Fred's first comment up there because he does talk about this. I think he watched the last show, and it's something about this is a reboot. Let's see this one here. I think.
Yeah.
There you Die Hard 2 almost feels like a reboot of the original. It once again has John McClane having to battle the bad guys during the holiday season. Only this time it has him battling real terrorists. Yeah, thanks, Slasher Fred. Yeah, it's well, let me give the lead in here. So this was Die Hard 2. Obviously, it does feel a lot like, but I think that's purposeful, Slasher Fred. Got to be during the holiday season, which is one of the reasons why I'm talking about it. And it's interesting. These things are shown during the they become Christmas classics. Maybe not quite what a wonderful life, but hey, they tend to show these around Christmas time all the time, right? Let's see. Before I go off to work in about 20 minutes, they filmed this film at a former U.S. Yeah, actually, yes, they did. And I'm actually from Michigan, and there were two airports that they filmed it at. And one is I think it's in Ada, Michigan, which I think a buddy of mine went on to play football up there at their college. So yeah, I'm familiar with. Yeah, they were going to do it in Colorado, but I guess Colorado, all the snow melted. So of course, the reason why I left Michigan is the snow doesn't melt. So I got the hell out of there, right? So it's like, okay, tried and true. If it melts in Michigan, you go to Canada, right? But it doesn't really melt in Michigan. It's like from November to March, and sometimes even into April, you're getting snow. So Colorado, what can I say? So, but anyway, so yes, it was filmed. Some of the stuff was filmed in Michigan, but this movie was released in 1990. It's an American action thriller directed by Renny Harlin, and I don't know that guy, and written by Stephen DeSouza and Doug Richardson. And one of the things that I noticed about the film and is it has the theme of South America, generals fighting against communists and the theme of the general getting involved in a little bit of drug use. We know that our drug distribution, we know that our corruption because of drugs, this stuff does happen. And it just reminded me, given the time frame, I think some of the inspiration for the plot line might have been, the Iran-Contra affair and, Colonel Ollie North, although, Colonel North doesn't play this Wazoo Special Forces colonel. He's just, a political adjutant, so to speak, and working behind the scenes in our intelligence agencies to do stuff like this. But I think some of the themes come from that. So when I was watching, I go, oh yeah, that's right. This was going on at the same time because Iran-Contra was 1986, so it was kind of perfect. If you're going to inspire a story, it was a perfect time frame. What do you think, Martine? Kind of some of those themes are consistent with where you're originally from, and generals getting involved in the drug trade because there's a lot of money in the drug trade, not a lot of money being a general, right?
Well, yeah, it seems somewhat some characters and motivations were inspired by the Nicaraguan events. Related where from I come from, we didn't see that involvement until the last 25 years when the government, there's the government or the regime, however you want to call those usurpers, when they began their relationships with the narco traffic guerrillas in Colombia.
Yeah.
Then our generals began to put their hands into that pot.
Yeah.
And not only generals, but high spheres of politicians and well, you must know because they are all banned from entering the U.S. They are even listed as terrorists and everything. So, but it's not the same because the narrative that we have about Nicaragua was they started that part of business as a means to fund other operations.
Yes.
And of course, as always happens, because the Colombian guerrillas did the same thing, they began trafficking in narcotics to fund their war efforts. But everybody that starts that way eventually says, there is a lot of money here.
Yeah.
We can forget the original objective and focus only on on the drug money. Uh, was not what happened with my corrupt generals and politicians. They just skip the part of the original objective from the beginning. Or you can say that the original objective always want to get rich.
Yeah. Well, you look at all these soldiers. I'm thinking all the soldiers as we get into this. There's a bunch of soldiers that actually side with them, and no, there's got to be a payoff they're not talking about in this for these guys because you're not going to go mercenary against your government for some South American general unless there's some kind of payoff, right? And so I even though they don't talk about it overtly, I think that's part of it. And but yeah, this goes back to Somoza in El Salvador, then of course Nicaragua with Danny Ortega and the Contras, and of course Colombia, Venezuela, and a lot of the stuff that's going on even currently today in Mexico. The cartels pretty much have significant control in Mexico, and Trump's tariffs hopefully will begin to slow that process down and reverse that process. So, Danny, you're old enough to remember Iran-Contra, maybe some similar themes here, right?
Yes,
Working with the bad guys to get our, what we want done politically, right, here in the U.S.
Oliver North was the fall guy. First of all, he was a middle management lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps in the National Security Agency, and he was the guy that took the brunt of it. But thank God for him, he rebounded real well and is financially secure for the rest of his life. But when you talk about the cocaine trade, there's a lot of speculation, and I kind of lean towards believing it. Is that the government was involved in the rapid increase of crack cocaine in the late 80s and early 90s to fund the illegal war in Nicaragua. So that's been bouncing around for many years, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but that one there is you can tend to believe it because I could see that the government doing that. But
I don't know if I agree with that, but I do agree with that a lot of people were making money, including bankers and other stuff. And so, yeah, politicians just kind of stayed away with it. Kind of like Hoover not addressing, espionage and, that kind of stuff when it was going on.
Yeah.
The mafia, he didn't deal with the mafia, but he was dealing with, Pretty Boy Floyd and, Babyface Nelson. And eventually somebody was right in his face. He had to deal with the mafia and espionage, but I think it was just they didn't want to. Yes, they have also filmed at LAX, and you can see New Zealand on the flight arrival aboard Air New Zealand doesn't fly to Dulles even now. Yeah, well, we'll take a look. Let's see.
They are consistent.
2 years after this movie came the very underrated Passenger 57, which involved federal agents having to battle hijackers on an airplane. Okay, well, I'll have to look at that one. I do occasionally kind of a B movie, interesting ones. We did a couple of those on the show. I also did one international one with what was the one we did from down in Brazil? I can't remember the movie now. It's I think it was one of your favorite movies, Martine. I can't think of it now. It's something Force, the Brazilian police down there going in the so we do occasional ones, but I'll take a look at that. Let's see. It was one of those things that was probably not sanctioned by the higher ups, but they knew who they were getting their information from. Oh, okay, yes. In terms of the politics, yeah, they're not sanctioned, or they just turn a blind eye to it because it was serving their political interests. I think it's probably more closer to the truth, Danny, and than knowingly, because I can't, you think about it, I mean, I've sat up at, higher level things, certainly not that level, and you're having discussions about stuff, and somebody's going to say, I don't think so. That's not a good idea, and here's why, now, if you do that too much, you don't get invited anymore, as I figured out. But
yeah, it's in the conspiracy theorist realm, it's it's really, you can't get 5 deputy sheriffs to agree on where to eat dinner. So how do you get 250 people to agree to
Bullshit. You just tell them, hey,
to
this place is free, and they'll all go there. What are you
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about? or half price.
Okay, they popped.
Oh, well, we're going there.
I just can't have too many of those Jack in the Box tacos anymore.
Yeah, All right, well, hey, let's roll the first scene, and we'll get into who's in this movie as this thing rolls. And obviously, John McClane, Bruce Willis comes back to reprise his role as John McClane. And my understanding is there's like 5 of these. I didn't realize there were 5 of these. So obviously, maybe the last 2 were forgettable because I didn't watch them. So here he is, and he's in the airport, and he's going to pick it up. He gets his car towed, and there he is. He's getting his car towed. The ever-suffering John McClane, things just aren't working out for him. He tries the badge. Now, the interesting thing about this one is he plays an LAPD lieutenant now. In the first one, he was a New York cop, right? And his wife is working in LA, so he's visiting for Christmas in LA, and he gets involved in this whole terrorism thing in LA. And then now suddenly he's an LA cop as a lieutenant. Now that all I have to do is fight a few terrorists, and I get to bump up a couple ranks in another department. That for me, that's unrealistic. But hey, they're making the storyline whatever they want to make it, right? But in fiction, you can do whatever you want, I guess. But in civil service, that doesn't work that way. But he comes back, and he's reprising his role, and his wife Bonnie Bedelia, is that how you say her name? Bedelia? Bedelia? She's Holly Gennaro McClane, and we got William Atherton. He plays the news guy. So when you play kind of a heel in shows, it can be fun character doing that, right? And he's in the airport, and he ends up getting tased in the John up there in the airport. And then we got Reginald Vell Johnson. He's come back as Al Powell, and one of the more interesting, we got William Sadler, who plays the crazy colonel, and John Amos, he plays, the turncoat major in this thing. But one of the more interesting persons in this movie is Fred Thompson.
Great guy.
Fred Thompson was a U.S. Senator for the state of Tennessee for a long time. And he dabbled in acting, and he made some money. He was on Law and Order for a little bit. After I think he passed away from cancer or something like that. So unfortunately, we lost him. But he plays the kind of the head of the air traffic control guy, and kind of an interesting guy, right, Danny Coon? So
yes, Fred Thompson, on top of being a senator and actor, he was also a presidential candidate back, I want to say, the 2018 when President Trump first ran. He was in that group of Republicans, and one of my favorite movies that he was in is The Hunt for Red October. And just a small bit, maybe a 5-minute role in it, but he made some classic lines. Just like in this movie, he's got some classic lines that they stick with you forever. So.
And he plays a good, he just plays the good guy in charge. Yeah, we're going to do this. Just charge ahead. And, I really like him. And then we got Dennis Franz in this movie. Now, I remember him from the TV series Hill Street Blues. Do you remember that?
Yeah, Hill Street Blues.
He played No, he didn't play Ranko. He was Benedetto or something like that.
But he was a lieutenant something. But
he was an undercover guy, was a little corrupt. But I remember him because like I said, when you get to play a heel, those are sometimes really good characters to play. And let's see, that was a weird C-123. I wanted to be okay. And then the other one was he played Andy Sipowicz
in NYPD Blue.
NYPD Blues, and that's probably he retired. He's like 80 years old now though.
I never really watched NYPD Blue that much, just because it was kind of hokey. But the last season, I watched it with Dennis Franz, and it was entertaining. But it was like, wow, I should have watched the whole 10-year series of this.
Yeah. Well,
he was a good actor, or is a good actor.
He's a good actor, and that's what he's best known for. So there is hope for balding, chubby actors. I think we can break into the industry now there, Danny. So, but it's That's what I remember him from. Martine, do you remember any of these guys? You want to comment on any of our actors as we move forward here?
Sorry, what?
Do you want to comment on any of the actors as we move forward in the movie?
Oh man, I could probably speak for a good chunk of time, and with my
Well, pick one of them. Which one do you want? What's your favorite actor in the movie? How's that?
ah, that's not fair.
That's not fair.
Well,
Yeah, I'm the host. I got to limit my guests.
yeah. Ah, we'll have to, I will have to be tied between William Sadler and Bruce Willis. If I have to, I'm thinking
yeah.
if a movie is offered, various movies are offered to me, and you just can watch one, uh, and I will only have 2 hours to decide. Well, okay, it's gonna be one of those two.
It's only a 2-hour show, so I just got to point that out to you. But here's the thing. I got to ask you this now. So you watched the movie, the last movie. So we had Hans. I forgot Hans Gruber's real name now at this point. But that villain versus this villain.
Alan Rickman. Oh no.
Yeah,
There's no comparison.
yeah, Alan Rickman. Yeah,
Hans Gruber he steals the show.
yeah, he's good. And what I like about William Sadler's character, William Stewart, is he's a nut. He really is a nut. Um, Ideologically driven nutcase, and the fact that he's doing whatever I thought it was Tai Chi in his room naked is later on in this movie. Okay, this guy's kind of out there a little bit, right?
You think?
But yeah, Hans Gruber, he's the better villain. But I remember we did this when I did Harry, the Dirty Harry series, which was the worst. What was the best villain? Right, not the worst villain, the best villain. And so far Hans has got it over Colonel Stewart here. But yeah, I think he played. It's I tell you, as if you're going to act, being the bad guy is probably the fun one, right? Because you get to delve into different, just do different things. It's so much more fun, and you get the audience reaction too to who you are. And the only thing is you can get kind of typecasted as a bad guy in these movies, and that's what you end up playing for the rest of your life, so to speak. So you can get typecasted, but he plays a good bad guy. Yeah, he absolutely does.
Yeah, he does. In the franchise of the Die Hard series, you're right. The bad guys are the fun part, because John McClane, he gets stereotypical after a while. Die Hard 1, he does this. Die Hard 2, he does this. Die Hard 3, he leaves LAPD and goes back to New York PD as a lieutenant. He's bouncing around different departments across the United States, and his thing is always basic. You can almost guess what's going to happen next after about the third or fourth Die Hard in the franchise. So with a bad guy, he's always a bad guy. You have no clue what the bad guy's going to do.
All right. Well, let me comment on Slasher Fred here. One of the most popular Die Hard imitators is the movie Speed. Yeah, I would agree with that. The Speed, this is the officer's trying. The bus is going fast. He's trying to slow it down. Yeah, I actually agree with that.
I could never understand the success of that movie, and even why there is a second part. that movie is so. It has so less content that you have each act of the movie is the same plot.
Yeah.
The movie happens 3 times in 2 hours. I don't get it.
Well, you know what?
Worrying about it. Whoa, what the second? That's a movie. No, it wasn't.
I just obviously some of the plots are unrealistic. I think the plot in this movie is way more unrealistic than the plot of the first Die Hard. But there is something I wanted to talk about, and this will be for Danny. So roll the next scene. Okay. So I did probably 10 years work in transit, and about 7 of those years, I was deeply involved in anti-terrorism. So if you roll the next scene, is behavioral observation. And the interesting thing about John McClane here is he happens to see somebody that he kind of recognizes, or he recognizes him as the colonel, and this guy recognizes him, but he's watching what's going on in the airport as he's going through the airport, You want to roll that scene, Martine? Did I include
Oh,
it? I
yes.
think I did. Yeah.
No,
And
what
yeah, and
behavioral?
what your behavioral observation, what he's doing is he sees two guys that don't fit in. They got the boots on, they got their packages, and he's seeing the behavior, and they're just not fitting in with the crowd, right? And that's
Yeah,
go ahead.
there's the worst covert operators ever.
I know. I do agree with that. And sometimes even a blind squirrel can get a nut. But yeah, and it's pretty obvious. But he's watching what's going on, and he ends up reacting. But it reminded me of we developed our own training scenario based upon the Israelis and the Brits on behavioral observation. And it's funny. The thing on behavioral observation, Danny, is it codifies that sixth sense that you have when you're looking at something that's wrong, right? It tells you, okay, these are the things when it's out of the ordinary, when it deviates from the norm, you need to pay attention to that when you're dealing with terrorism and crime, right? And it's kind of, I always felt it was like, as a cop, it's those things, those strategies we develop over time, just because that's what we're focused on every day. And what this does is it breaks it down into theory. It talks about what to look for, why to look for it, and I know you'll understand this, Danny. Is there are a lot of guys that are really good at this, and then there are some guys you work with that couldn't find a criminal to save their life just because they never really, you know what I mean? You worked with
Yeah.
that partner, right? They never really developed this. But he's seeing these guys, he sees the deviation, he watches what they're doing, they're out of place. And I saw this as, behavioral observation. It's a busy, crowdy airport. But that's the kind of stuff that we taught when we were fighting, terrorism. But it's also a skill set that cops have over time. Yeah, do you agree?
That's correct. What we learn very early in law enforcement careers is situational awareness, which is the same thing as behavioral, what you're talking about. And I talked to a couple about a year ago or so. I talked to a young fireman or a LA County firefighter who was a Army Ranger with several deployments to Afghanistan. And he would talk about when he's going into buildings, he was always looking up and covering, seeing what's the high ground. Well, the same thing is in law enforcement. Wherever I go, I'm just kind of always looking around, hardly ever look anybody in the eye other than my wife. And I'm just looking around, paying attention to what's going on and seeing what's usual and unusual. And that's also I write about in my book is the hypervigilant cycle. That's a little bit of hypervigilant where you're constantly looking around, and that's what John McClane's doing here. He's just kind of paying attention to what's going on. A little bit of situational awareness, and that's it could be a good thing and it could be a bad thing. And in this case here, it turns out to be a pretty good thing.
Yeah. Hey, good morning, Cam. And it's the interesting thing is we taught it. Hey, here are the things you look for, and here's why. Because you want to increase the skill sets of your folks, and you want them to practice it every day. And if they do that, they stand a better chance. What we learned is they stood a better chance of catching a terrorist because it's like looking for a needle in a haystack in a field of haystacks. The likelihood that LA Transit would be targeted was small. And so, but if you never look for the terrorists, you're never going to find them. If you spend your time looking for them, you increase your likelihood to find them. And in the meantime, you're usually catching a lot of bad guys because you're watching what people are doing, and bad guys will have the same behavioral cues that a terrorist will have when they're trying to get away with something, right? And what we see in the film here, though, is also what they call deviation assessment. You look at what deviates from the norm, and guys are, wearing their military boots with their pants tucked in, that, it's not unusual in an airport, but they're a little more relaxed, and, they're not trying to hide who they are. In the military, guys in airports either have full dress uniform or they're in soft clothes, right? They're not kind of halfway, right? And they kind of, and they seem like they're on a mission there. So for John McClane, that deviates from the standard.
Back in the late 80s, early 90s, it would have been the Hare Krishnas with the boots or the pants tucked into the boots and walking up to you. So,
well, those guys blend in the woodwork there. They're to be ignored, right? So what do you think, Martine? You heard my explanation on behavioral observation. Obviously, this is a cinematic dramatization of that, but that's what we try to teach our folks, and you see it displayed in the movie.
Well, yeah, and at a certain point, everybody do it instinctively. Even especially if you're a parent, you have to always be attentive to changes in some patterns or things that are not common, that seems a little out of place. But yeah, it's, sometimes it can be difficult. Uh, I I was once riding with a friend of mine. He was a member of the National Guard, and it was at night, and we were around a hospital, and he saw this kid running in the middle of the night, in the middle of, and he stopped the car and went and stopped it, and the kid was just buying medicines for his mother that was in the hospital. He was running from the drugstore to the hospital.
Yep.
I've been in that in situations like that where once the police stopped me because they thought it was suspicion that I was running in the middle of the street. I was watching to catch. I was trying to catch the bus, which now has left me. Thank you, officer.
You know, there's two things that the whole catch. So we would have a lot of purse snatches where I worked, did most of my patrol time as a deputy in West Hollywood because there was a lot of pedestrian traffic. And so obviously it'd be purse snatching and person's running, right? And I don't know how many people I chased, purse snatching or robberies running. But I tell you, when they were running for the bus, that always got my attention because I always thought it was a purse snatcher, right? So that's the first, because and the other one was, on the Sunset Strip behind a lot of the clubs, people would go there and do coke, right? And so if you wanted to make a quick coke arrest, you just go up on Sunset on a Friday or Saturday night, and you just go through the parking lot, and you'd find somebody snorting coke. They'd have some coke. You make your quick dope arrest, get that under your belt. They'll go work with the narcotics guys a couple days later, and then you go, maybe go work the burglars on the East End once they start hitting the sub garages or whatnot. But when you did that, there were two other potential behaviors that were similar to, bending down and snorting coke. One was, of course, a sexual act, which I won't get into too much detail on because I keep my show G-rated. Tell Gary that, And the other one was tourists looking at a map. Where the hell are we? They're lost, and they pulled into a parking lot to find out their way out. So they were looking at a map or something like that, which was a less frequent, but it did happen. So, yeah. So you look at the behavioral observation, but the key thing about behavioral observation is we always taught, go look, turn over that rock, check, and you stand a better chance of finding the bad guy. Now, Danny, I said something at the beginning of this little run here. Sometimes you work with guys that they can't arrest their way out of a paper bag. They don't see the forest through the trees. They're the guy that's on the team that just follows everybody because they can't see it. Some guys just never pick up that skill, right?
That's correct. Near the end of my career, when I was a detective at Compton, and one weekend I was working an overtime shot with a partner who was, I think he came over from AOT to advanced officer training to work in overtime spot. We were working together. He had worked Compton previously. I knew who he was. And we're just talking about some of the trainees and some of the people that got off training. And he put it the right way. And you just said it too. It's what you see. He doesn't know how to read the public. Yeah. And so, you and I, we see someone walking down the street or I see someone getting off the train in South LA running. To me, he just robbed someone on the train.
Yes. And he might be running to a bus. So sometimes that happens, but yeah.
True. And, to put it in that perspective, but you see stuff like that and you go, there's something weird. Let's look at it. Where, the guy that doesn't get it or your everyday general public, they see something, oh, cool. They have no idea that guy just tossed a gun underneath the car and because they can't put two and two together. I've seen plenty of guys like that, but there's other places with large police departments. There's other places for people like that on the department where they can go into like traffic or
courts or something like that.
courts or the jails.
Someplace. Nothing against our guys that work courts and other places, but yeah,
There's a in the largest apartments there's a fit for just about everybody, because not everybody's cut out to be a street cop. It's a calling to be a good street cop, I guess, and it's something you learn, and it's a skill that once you get, even though we always talk about perishable skills, once you get it, you don't lose it.
It's with you.
I'm driving around, in San Diego. I'm going, oh yeah, really? We don't want to go that way. Let's go right instead. So,
Well, but now that you're retired, oh, do you see that, honey? Yeah, I saw it. We're going. We're moving forward. We ain't stopping. We ain't getting involved, because what I see is danger, Will Robinson. Danger, Will Robinson.
and then when you're married to someone who was a police officer for 12 years, it's even more fun, because she sees things that I don't see.
Well, but at least she'll understand. No danger, Will Robinson. You
exactly.
kind of, when you're with somebody who hasn't worked, let's just go and make a phone call, right? Or let's go be a good witness. But and the scene we just saw, Willis does follow him into the baggage handling area, and they end up shooting up a lot of luggage. She ends up killing one guy with the baggage mover thing, which I thought, I don't see that happening. But I was, I just traveled to Europe and I traveled to Mexico recently. I just can't imagine all my luggage getting shot up. But one of the things that because we're going to roll into the next scene, so I want to preface this. So this is Christmas Eve, right?
I think that scene already happened, because
I know I did. I'm just referencing back, but I have to so I was the chief of transit for the LA Metro, and so Christmas was pretty quiet for us, right? But there are other days when transit gets really, really busy. And like Wednesdays was always your peak day. You had the most traffic. And then, between, in the morning between like 6 and 9, and in the afternoon between 3 and 7, man, you got a ton of passengers. And you're just moving. Your goal is to move them quickly, and get it processed. So you're because here the thing what people have to understand, this is both for airports and trains, is this is an interconnected system. So if you shut one part of the system down, it impacts the entire system. Now, I had the benefit as the chief of police for LA Metro to coordinate and communicate with the airlines folks, freight rail, the ports, so freight coming in there. And you see that these are interconnected system. And if one of the major hubs goes down, and in this case, it would be LaGuardia, that's a major hub. If that goes down, it impacts everybody everywhere, right? Because I got to set up the next scene, right? So, and this is where we meet the captain. Now, I would have never been the captain, here, Andy Sifowitz here, or the guy, the captain here. I forget what's his character's name. We got to bring up his character name here. Let's see here.
Carmine. Oh my God.
Carmine Lorenzo.
Lorenzo.
So let's roll the captain scene, because I can understand his stress at keeping things moving and his disregard at the shooting scene. And it's our first introduction to, and here he is, Andy Sifowitz. I gotta, that's what I think of him as, right? Or Benedetto from.
I see this character, and I think of somebody that at some point was a good cop, but he forgot the comfortability of his job, make him forget how things are really done.
Well, so he's, of course, he's mad, and he says that LA badge don't mean anything here. I can get that, but I have to tell you, if we shut down a major hub or a major train thing, I was getting phone calls within a couple of minutes as the chief. What's going on? How, and so I had to make sure, hey, if you're shutting down, your first phone call is to me, because I would get phone calls from the head of the metro system. I'd get phone calls from aides to the political folks, the mayor, and the board of supervisors folks. It was, I had hair when I started that job, and let me tell you something. It was one of the most stressful jobs I ever had, because I was just, so I can at least understand what our Carmine is going through here. Our character here is when you start shutting down a major hub, and it's Christmas Eve, you're going to get phone calls. Like, if most people don't understand it, but the operation of most municipal airports is usually a joint powers authority with multiple governments, so county and city governments. And you start shutting it down, the calls go to the mayor comes to you. So this, I kind of set this up because most people don't understand, well, why is this guy being such a jerk? Well, I understand the pressure he's under. And the funny thing is, what do you mean you're not going to, you're not going to do a regular crime scene? This is John McClane. You're not going to do a regular crime scene in our baggage hauling area. What do you mean you're not going to do that? Oh, I know that story, right? How quickly can you get the coroner there? Can we train our folks to do the coroner's job because we can't wait for the coroner? Those are kinds of discussions I had, and so I saw that with this scene, the political pressures to keep it moving, and so and of course Carmine's like, whatever, McClane, I don't, you just want to be another hero again here. This ain't this ain't L.A. and knock it off. But go ahead.
I mean, he should have done something, but look for a compromise. Let's meet in the middle, because what McLean's saying is a valid point. That these are not regular thugs. Yeah. They have sophisticated weaponry.
Yeah,
because at the time that the Glocks weren't as common as are now, and he's I don't know, he's focused on the tumultuous
this is
movement of people.
This is the extreme, of course, because I can tell you right now, if I was I'd have shut it down. We'd have been shutting it down. We'd have been doing the delays, at least on that portion of the airport. I would have tried to isolate it as best I can. Yeah, but we'd have shut down, and we'd have done everything you need to do. Because you're right, two guys invading invading your baggage area with a clear intent to do something, and they're both armed and they both look like the military. That wouldn't be hard for me to make that decision. But I'm just, in terms of building the character here of Carmine, I can see, clearly somebody did some research on interconnected transportation systems when they and the pressure on our captain here. That's what I see.
He's just your typical East Coast Adam Henry cop. That's what they have him portraying, so, which isn't true, but that's how they portray a lot of, or Hollywood portrays a lot of East Coast cops. Is just, it's like how they portray cops in the South. There's a bunch of hicks. So.
Bada bing, bada boom. I will say that his character here, Carmine, and it does. You see a lot of similarities with Sifowitz. You see a lot of similarities with Benedetto from Hill Street Blues. He's got, he plays up a lot of that tough New York kind of cop attitude. Although here he's DC, but yeah, I want to say, yeah, he's kind of a character actor, because they wrap a major part behind a guy who has kind of a character actor thing, right? Do you agree with that, Danny?
One of the things I got a kick out of it, and yeah, he's doing a character actor role, and they're portraying him in a certain way as a tough East Coast cop, kind of arrogant and everything. But what I got a kick out of is when he says, "You violated 5 FFA or 5 FAA laws and rules and 7 District of Columbia laws." Well, actually, Dulles Airport's in Virginia. Maybe a couple of Virginia state laws, but no DC rules.
We'll have to get back, and that's a throwback to Die Hard 1, where he's on the top of the building and he's radioing in, and he goes,
"Oh yeah,
this frequency is for emergency only." And what do you think I'm calling about? I'm not calling to order a pizza. Well, if you don't stop, we're gonna send some. Great, send the Marines, send the Army, send everybody, right? It's a play on the frustrations of John McClane, because bureaucratic resistance and they don't recognize the urgency of it. And it's funny because I know one of the guys said that this speed is kind of the playoff on this, but this kind of pattern, kind of the anti-hero guy, is a playoff on Dirty Harry. Now, Dirty Harry started, in the 70s, and it's you remember, Clint Eastwood. What do you mean we're not going to do that? Aren't we going to try and catch the crooks? I mean, he's throwing it right back at the bureaucratic machine. Who cares about Escobedo? Who cares about the rights? I mean, the kidnap victim is buried somewhere, and my job is to get her out alive. Do you care about that? Have you forgotten? So it's kind of that same kind of theme with Die Hard as with Dirty Harry. I don't know if you see some similarity, Danny. That's kind of how I see it. Although McClane is much more fun, Harry is very dark about it. McClane is much more fun. What I mean? I don't want to say, well, yeah, he is. He's a little more fun about it. So, what do you think?
I think over the years we probably broke a rule or two just
Yeah.
to get the job done and let the pieces fall where they fall. And usually you'd get some discipline behind it. But overall, the game plan was the bad guy went to jail, the victim got saved, and all that. So, yeah. It's happened, and it'll continue to happen. And if I break some department policy every once in a while doing things, if it's the right thing to do, then I'll take the days on the bricks. So as long as no good guys got hurt, no innocent people got hurt, that's all I cared about.
What was that? So when I went to the academy, you're in the same era. It's like got to be
Right.
flexible, right? That's got to be flexible, right? And that's and I think the other thing that a lot of people forget about, if you ever read the policy and procedure manual, I know you read it at least once, right? You promoted to sergeant. I've had, obviously I had to read it a few times, but at the beginning, it talks about how it's a guide. This is a guide, right? And there's shalls and there's mays and all this other stuff, and so as the shalls and must, the mays are a little softer. Most people don't realize that, but when you start reading policy, well, this is you may. That's language that gives the guy latitude, and sometimes you get these. It's kind of like the guy that can't catch anybody. It's the administrator or the person looking at discipline can't. Okay, this is what they call a little wiggle room here. This is a little soft word to give. If the situation presents a need to deviate, these words allow that, right? So,
I used to encourage trainees, especially my trainees back in the 80s, look at the policy and procedures, read what, know the force policy, know the pursuit policy, know this and that, just because it's going to come up. And when you break those rules, don't don't say I didn't tell you so, or I told you so.
Right. Or
which is something else they always said in the academy.
I was at a station that had a reputation, and we were sent there to help clean it up a little bit. I won't throw those guys out there, but I was at briefing, and they were getting on me as the supervisor. I was the sergeant doing briefing, and at the time I hadn't joined the police union, POPA, or the sergeant's union, POPA, because I didn't like the leadership, right? And I had been a sergeant, for 4 years, and they were like aghast. Oh my God, you don't belong to the union? Oh my God, what are you going to do to protect yourself? And I just asked one question. So let me ask one question to see. Has anybody here read the Police Officer Bill of Rights? Not one of them had read the Police Officer Bill of Rights. So, that's your rights to protect yourself against an onerous investigation, whatnot. I've read them several times, and I can always pull somebody in to help me. I'm going to try and stay within the confines of the scope of what we're doing. I did ultimately join, right? But I told them, I said, if you don't depend on the union to protect you, you got to protect yourself, right? But now we're getting
exactly. That's one of my more permanent themes of discussion with friends. How stop relying on others for things that you should be doing.
Well, I was shocked because it was one of those places where it's us versus them, management versus the line, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, you guys, you I couldn't believe it. They hadn't all read it and knew it thoroughly, right? Well, I read this section. That ain't good enough. You got to read the whole thing and understand how many people can interview, how they need to conduct themselves, when they could do their interviews, what they can ask you, what are your rights for here, what can they ask you, why can they ask you, if it's an accusation and a violation of law, what do you get to do, and they didn't know any of this. And please don't tell me that you're anti-management if you haven't even read the document that gives you rights to hold back management. Come on. So, but it was, you're right, Martine, that you you need to be there first. Heck, I'll admit it. When I went through the divorce, my divorce, I read everything I could about family divorce law and alimony because I want to know. It's a divorce is a battle, right? I want to know what I'm marching into, right? I want to know what I'm facing, and I don't want to just leave it up. In fact, I interviewed 4 lawyers after I did my research, and I wanted to hear what they had to say. Does it line up with family law, right? Family, related to alimony, because that was the big issue. And based upon their answers, I had a pretty good idea of what I should pay because I was asking them that, okay, given that temporary support is this and this, based upon this and this and this, what should permanent support look like? And then you get that answer and you go, okay, 3 out of 4 is good. So that gave me that. And then how would you address getting there, right? Those are the questions I asked. And I got the answer I wanted. And much to my ex-wife's chagrin, I got what I wanted. so it worked out. So why don't leave it up to somebody else to fight that battle? Read the sections, understand the sections. Here I got off on a tangent, but it's that's what you got to do. So,
and that's what McLean did. He knew the rules, so he knew which ones he could break. So.
Yeah, right. Well, common sense would dictate you can go in this direction when people got guns, right? Let's do the Fred Thompson scene and this before our break because I wanted to. Here's the other thing. So Fred Thompson, obviously we already talked about him, former U.S. Senator, former candidate for President of the United States. Good guy. I always liked him, and I didn't realize he had passed away from cancer. But the interesting thing is the tower, right? Have you ever been in the tower at LAX, Danny?
Not LAX, but Long Beach Airport.
Long Beach. Okay. So I got a tour of LAX. So LAX. So I'll go back to the interconnectedness here and the importance of it. 600 flights come out of LAX daily, right? So if you can, and it's the largest municipal international airport, municipal airport. So in the United States, it's the busiest. Let me put it that way. It's the busiest. And so if you shut that down, now you got 600 planes that are coming in that you got to direct somewhere else. Here's the other thing I noticed. And so that kind of lays out the challenge. LaGuardia in New York will be a busy airport, right? It's got to be in the top 10. Now it's not their, I forget what their, no, in DC. This is DC. Yeah, was it LaGuardia or no? It was DC.
DC has national.
It's Dulles, and they have another one in DC. I can't remember what.
You have Dulles, which is right outside of DC in Virginia. You have National Airport, which is downtown or right next to the Capitol building, basically, in DC. And then you have BWI, Baltimore Washington International, in between Baltimore and DC.
So this would be one of their busier airport. It would be at least in the top 15 in my book, particularly if you understand DC or Washington, people are usually getting out of town. And so that becomes a very busy airport that day. It's less people coming in because it's one of those towns where it closes doors during the holidays, right? And people are leaving, right? But anyways, it's just a busy time. Here's the other thing I noticed about the tower, which I don't necessarily agree with, is it was chaotic. I'm like, holy smokes, this is, so obviously there's a lot of dramatization going on. They're shutting down the airport, the terrorists are there, but there was a lot of people in there that I go, wow, I don't remember this many people being in the tower at LAX, and it was a much busy airport. And I certainly don't remember a lot of the chaos and noise going on, right? So, but that's my observation. But the importance of the tower and managing the flights coming in and monitoring them as they come in to see where they're at, and just doing the aircraft traffic control, right? Who lands, who circles, and that kind of thing. Yeah. It was interesting watching it based upon my frame of reference for LAX and how busy they are and what you see when you go there. Hello, Penny. Welcome to the show. Any comments, Danny? You went to Long Beach Airport's tower. What did you think?
Oh, it was relatively quiet, but in the movie, you have to remember that in the initial scene where they're showing the tower and everything, they're dealing with another emergency. They're dealing with National being shut down because of snow. They've got horrendous weather conditions there at Dulles. I don't know why they never mentioned BWI or anything in Pennsylvania or New York, but New York would have been busy. But they were dealing with that emergency going on with the snow and the weather, and then this new emergency come on that kind of threw in a little bit a monkey wrench in how chaotic it's going to be. But even it was kind of, you're right, unrealistic, because it was chaotic. Most of these guys are just sitting there and watching their screen and talking. You know, if they have an emergency of a plane going down or something like that, they push a button, a supervisor comes over.
Yeah,
So
it'll go either you'll keep it or it'll get shipped off to somebody else.
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I've been to our radio room, and it can get most people. You know, I think obviously this is cinematic. They're making it dramatic, but man,
Yeah.
when you know a good air traffic controller or a good dispatcher, whatever, you know, their pulse really doesn't go up that much, right? Boom. Okay, you know, heavy body, whatever, 155, you know, I understand you are declaring an emergency. We'll get the people, whatever, you know, you don't even see, because the thing about it is when you're dealing with that, I don't know. I had this one incident where it was really traumatic in the station. It was the Carson lobby shooting. And I can remember walking out to discuss with my staff what we're going to do. You know, we took the guy out. He's dead in the lobby, but everybody's at like level 10. And I thought to myself, okay, I got to bring them all down to like 3 or 4, right? You know, because we got things we got to get done. And I said, I just got to talk to them like I'm ordering lunch, right? Okay. I'd like some fries from you. I'd like a burger from you. I'd like, you know, and really I'm saying, can you contain the area? Can you guys make sure that the deputy gets to the hospital and send something with them, give me some reports back. I don't want any calls coming directly through me. You know, so I'm like, you know, I need a Coke, you know, with some ice, please. You know, that's how I felt like I had to be, right? When I talked to these guys.
That's the mark of a great supervisor.
And it immediately brought things down. Boom. This is basically, I mean, we killed the guy in the lobby, but it's a 245 that just happened where the suspect is down, right? And okay, let's bring her all down. We got things to do. So I'm ordering my lunch. That's how I felt about it. And somebody told me afterwards, yeah, you were very calm. And, you know, it wasn't that I was not excited, and it wasn't that I wasn't a little anxious. It's just I realized I had to handle this a certain way to get the outcomes that I needed, right? And that's how I kind of see anybody working like an air traffic controller would do. You kind of agree with that, Danny?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. That's you got to be able to bring things down, and you throw in there any emergency response dispatcher. I think they have ice going through their blood, because they are so calm and cool and collected. You know, the world's falling apart on you. And they're just sitting there.
It's funny. In that situation, I just remember, okay, I remember thinking, okay, I gotta act like I'm ordering lunch, and it worked. It worked. So, all right, we are at break time, Martina. Are we ready to roll with our break time? And if you gotta go potty, if you're watching the show, this is the time to go potty. I mean, I want you to hear the commercials too, but you can go back and listen to them. But this is the time if we need a break. All right, Martine, we'll see you in a little bit. Stick around for the second half of the show, folks.
There's only one location on the internet where you can get it all. Movie, TV, and comic industry. News and rumor analysis. Official scoops from Geekosity magazine. Reviews and interviews. So, when you need it to be Sunday, there's only one place to go, mate. Pop Culture Minefield, where they're always talking nerdy nerd stuff. Right, jog on then. There's only one location on the internet where you can get it all. Movie, TV, and comic industry. News and rumor analysis. Official scoops from Geekosity magazine. Reviews and interviews. So, when you need it to be Sunday, there's only one place to go, mate. Pop Culture Minefield, where they're always talking nerdy nerd stuff. Right, jog on then.
Hey, welcome back to Morning Coffee with the Chief. We are reviewing the movie Die Hard 2. And I forgot, I said hello to Penny, but I didn't say hello to her grandson. So hello to the grandson and happy Thanksgiving to you guys that are joining us. I mean, it's just a couple days away. So I hope everybody's got some great plans. And as I said earlier, I'll be serving some meals at the LA Mission. Do yourself a favor, go to losangelesmission.org and make a donation. Additionally, if you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to follow us on YouTube, like the show, share with a friend. If you're following us on Rumble, there when you follow us, you follow us on Rumble, you like as well and share as well. Our audience, our subscriptions are growing, but this can only grow if you share with a friend, if you make sure you subscribe or you follow us, depending on what platform you're watching on us. So, but anyways, happy Thanksgiving to the folks that are watching us, and thank you for dropping in on the show. All right, everybody got their business done. I think everybody's got their stuff back on, and my prostate always gives me a problem, so I got to go use the bathroom in between here. That's just the way it is these days. Okay, so hey, the next scene, we'll just jump on it. This is just the beginning, right? So John McClane. He sees this stuff happening. He sees, obviously, there's the dead guys in the baggage area. That guy in the baggage area, shot in the baggage area. And now he's in the tower when the terrorists call in and they start shutting down runways. And he says, this is just the beginning. Of course, this is a la Die Hard, the first Die Hard, right? And there are similarities. So this one, they managed to shut down the runways at the airport and shut down the airport. If you remember in Die Hard 1, they managed to shut down a large section of the power grid in the city of Los Angeles during Christmas, which is hard to believe, but that's what they do, right? And here's our folks. They're about ready to take control over the airport. They're shutting down. They're cutting the link and all this other stuff. But he in this scene, this stuff happens, and he says, "This is just the beginning." He knows he's going to come, and he's right. And the interesting thing is they're chasing the problem, which what happens in disasters and happens in law enforcement. The event happens and you're chasing it to get in front of it, to bring order to chaos, is really how I always felt about it. You heard me just talk about, we had a very chaotic situation in the station, and you always recognize that my goal is to bring order to chaos, even if it's organized chaos. That's what you're trying to do in these situations. But now our heroes, and including John McClane, our guy that's running the airport, and everybody else involved, even Carmine, they're now chasing the problem to get in front of it. These folks are ahead of them. They now have to chase it. That's classic game theory stuff too, right? You've got two components struggling against each other, and one has the advantage, and you're trying to gain the advantage. I mean, that comes from a study of economics, but that works when you're dealing with terrorists. It works when you're dealing with criminals. But they're chasing the problems, right, Danny?
That's correct. Yeah. Figure out what you're going to do, and then I like how John McClane went down to the guy who I would call him the head of facilities there, the guy in the basement. The guy in the basement, the facilities dude, he's the one with the maps. He knows everything about that airport. Going down there greatly increased McClane's chances of getting ahead of the ball and figuring out what was going to happen next, because nobody would know about the underground wires going underneath the church, and nobody would know about the extension to the airport other than the guy that's running the facility. The traffic controllers, they wouldn't know that. The airport chief, he would know where all the little cubby holes are, probably. And maybe most of the airport police wouldn't know all the cubby holes. I mean, we worked patrol for a long time, and we didn't know every cubby hole in the city that we worked in. So getting the maintenance guy or the facilities guy on your side, that was a huge plus in getting ahead of the game.
Yeah, I think there were there's really two characters that helped him out to gain an advantage. One is the shorter black guy here. I think he's and that's who you're talking about. I think it's Art. Is that Art Evans? He's the chief engineer.
You get the chief engineer. Yeah, he was the geek, and that was cool about him is he knew all the electrical systems and radio systems and how to backdoor stuff. And then you had the kind of guy down in the basement who was
the janitor guy. I'm trying to think
at
of who.
facilities or something because he knew a lot about the facilities of the airport.
And that gave him an advantage. But I got to do a kind of a shout out to the folks at LA Metro, the people that I worked with who were, because there was one guy we worked with. He had worked his way up the ranks, right? And he was now like the number 3 guy. And I don't even think he had a degree, but he had worked as a bus operator. He'd worked on the light rail. He had worked on all of these things all the way up the chain of command. And as you said, he understood the total operation. He understood the nooks and crannies. He understood legacy infrastructure because, when you have systems like this, you have your primary system and then you have your fallback systems. He understood all of those things because the fallback system used to be the primary system, right? And he understood all these things, and he was just a very valuable resource. Because if I said, hey, I want to kind of do this in terms of adding cameras or automated license plate reader cameras or CCTV cameras and things like that. He understood the system, and if he didn't understand it himself, he knew where to go to find the right person who knew the system. And because sometimes because transit, like I'm sure, like the airport here, we're going to hire the guy from Denver to come in and run, because that's what they did. They hired a guy from Denver to run an LA Metro. He doesn't know it, right? And unfortunately, that idiot fired all the good people, and it's just a big mess. But you get a lot of these people, they transfer in from somewhere else to there, and they don't know it like these guys do. And so my shout out to the Metro folks and the people involved in transportation. If you are a ground pounder and work your way up, you are worth your weight in gold. And sometimes these political appointees just don't understand it, and that's kind of what you're talking about, Danny. You kind of agree with that?
Yeah, I do. It's I lost my train of thought there. It was in the same thing though, but you gotta have guys that understand the system to work their way up. I look at the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department now, and how you got leaders in there that have no clue of what the department's about because they didn't come up from the bottom and they don't know. And it's the same thing, when Bill Breton came over from New York Police Department to LA, he did a good job of what his was supposed to do, and that was the broken windows effect and lowering crime. But sadly, he had no clue the day-to-day operation of the Los Angeles Police Department. And it's the same thing when he went to New York from Boston. He kind of had to grab on for a while to learn their operation real quick. But that's how it is. You got to have leadership from within to maintain some type of equal balance or equilibrium in the agency.
Yeah, I saw that when Jim McDonald came over from LAPD and when he was elected sheriff. He really never really understood custody. And custody is kind of like most people don't recognize it's a huge interconnected animal too. People come in IRC, the Immediate Reception Center, they got to get processed, then they got to get pushed out to one of 2 jails that are kind of a transitional jails. That's Twin Towers and MCJ. And as they're getting vetted, every inmate is like a Tetris piece. It kind of changes and stuff like that. And you got to find a place to fit it. That's how I felt, because I did population management I did so many things on the department, and it's like you're trying to make these different pieces fit in a system, and the pieces don't, and it's interconnected. And we would get, like, I look at Carmine here, we would get people in. When I was doing that, I had captains who only looked at my jail was the most important thing, and only those things that impacted me and made me promotable were the things that I cared about, right? Those things that happen, right? And when I got to this job of managing, inmate population, I saw, and everybody was operating that way. And I finally started doing conference calls and saying, hey, bullshit. This is an interconnected system. Everybody has to play. You don't get to just play what's important to you. And if you do that, at that point in my career, I felt my career was over with. So I don't mind calling you out. And I basically said that I'm going to call you out. So, and everybody started playing better because we were getting really short on bed space. So you had to kind of squeeze all those little pieces to make them work better. And you know what? It got a lot better, and I got through my drama. And then they ended up promoting me to chief. Go figure,
Yeah, but Central Jail was an animal within its own.
Well, and I had some good people working with me, but I had other people but these interconnected systems, like we see, people like, our engineer, because, so it was the guys that fixed the cells.
Yeah.
If they weren't getting noticed in time, they couldn't fix the cell in time, so you lose beds, right? So it's just improving the lag time in terms of reporting cells, and then following up to make sure that they've got them done. And just adding that piece to it added, 50 or 60 beds a day, just by fixing those little pieces. And so when you have somebody like our guy here, the engineer, Art Evans is his name, and he plays Leslie Barnes. We have something like that. They understand that, and they know how to make it work better, and they know how to troubleshoot, and that's and these two guys portrayed that kind of that capability, and cops have to. I don't know anything about transportation when I started working there. I had to latch on to those people who knew and understood that stuff, and a good cop does that, right? Because if you think about it, even the best cop is a jack of all trades, but you got to get the expert in there if you really want to be successful. That's what you're kind of talking about, right?
Right. And I was just thinking about it. You fall back to the original Die Hard. Didn't John McClane get up with their engineer there, and he was pulling out schematics of each floor and where the vents went? Basically, kind of the same scenario in this one.
Yeah, I don't remember that one. I don't know, Mark. No,
No.
he figured it out himself. What he did is he found schematics. And that part was unbelievable. You got this 35-story building, and he ends up in an area where it's under construction, and he figures it out. But hey, he's a hero from New York. I guess when he went to L.A., they dumbed him down a little bit, and he had to use some experts. But
I just want to know how he gets down a 5-mile runway in 2 minutes. Actually, I think the runways for international flights are a lot longer than 5 miles.
Well, when he's running down that underground tunnel, right, and he's yelling on the radio. I know that's later on, but I just got to bring it up because I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's BS. There's no reception in that damn tunnel. I don't know how many radios I carried. If I'm in a tunnel like that, I'm not hearing anything. And he's like, oh, yeah, do this, do that. He's giving instructions on his radio like everybody's hearing them. And I go, no way. Because, for that to be what you have to do for it to work in a tunnel. Okay, so I'll give you a lesson. You have to have repeaters. And the likelihood of being in a tunnel and having to communicate is slim to none, right? So the transportation system would not add the repeaters. Does that make? It's a cost thing. So why add? If a repeater costs you, a couple grand each, why are you worried about having reception in a tunnel that hardly anybody goes in, or most people don't go in? You don't, so you don't spend the money.
That's why they have lawn lines through them, and with all that metal around there, your radio frequency or radio waves aren't going out anyway.
But this is Hollywood, right? Hollywood. Anything can be done in Hollywood, right? So that's the fun thing about the movie. So this is just the beginning, and let's see. I got some notes here. He's got a SWAT team. Here's it's. I think this is Carmine. I got a SWAT team. Carmine is starting to figure out. Okay, maybe I need to be following McClane's lead, and they've already shut down the airport, and McClane is making decision, and Carmine's kind of and he says he's got a SWAT team. I go, who has a SWAT team in their back pocket? What airport has that? They don't have that. They might have some guys that are tactically trained, but they don't have a SWAT team. Let's see. Another basement, another elevator. Oh, McClane does have some of these little quippy comments. So another basement, another elevator, which is a throwback to how did I get myself into this? Here I am. Yeah.
What did he say to that news reporter? I've done this before. When he was in the elevator.
Yeah. I've done this before. Yeah. As he he disappears as they're getting them moved out of there. Regular normal Christmas. I think that's another comedy. He says regular normal Christmas for John McClane, for our hero,
Yeah.
right? But, not for the rest of us. So, I'd have to say, so Martine, these are escapist movies, right? They're unbelievable. It is Hollywood.
Yeah.
This is, they release them somewhere around probably around Thanksgiving, right? And this is just escapist Hollywood, just to enjoy. It's not realistic. So guys like me got to get past all that, but it's just fun and escapist action Hollywood, right?
Yes, it is. Especially the things that they do they did with the plane, putting ejector seats on a plane that doesn't have ejector seats.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the most uh uh oh, how can I say this? Those grenades are the most the longest fuse ever.
I know.
It took forever for those things to go.
Yeah, like 30 seconds to go boom.
I know. Let's throw the next scene because they got an actor in it that we haven't. He played more of a bit role, and it's Robert Patrick, right? Let me look him up real quick. So he played in. Let's see. Was he
The T-1000 on Terminator 2.
right? Yes. And
Oh man, he was so young in this.
I know, and I mean, if you look at him now, he's definitely looking his age. But so do you know what we're talking about, Danny? So he plays a mercenary, and he gets in a fight here with John McClane. He ends up, I think he goes on to mercenary hell here after he plays with John McClane here.
Okay.
But if you look at some of the faces, he played in was it Terminator 2 or 3?
Yes, Terminator 2.
He played the guy that he played the Terminator that kind of melted like metal and reformed and all that other stuff with Arnold Schwarzenegger and all that other stuff. That's who he is, and he's in this movie as a very young mercenary. Here he is. He's shooting it out with our hero John McClane. But one of the things about now since I got doing these movies is seeing these guys as they start their career as character actors or bit parts and how they progress and get bigger parts. And now he plays a villain in this one. He plays a villain in Terminator 2. But you see the faces and you recognize them. I don't know if you recognized him at all, but I did. And I go, wow, that's interesting. So what do you think? Watching movies, you see guys progress, right? They just like Sipowicz, right? Starts out in Hill Street Blues, then he goes, or not Hill Street Blues, yeah, Hill Street Blues, and then NYPD Blues. Wow, I just realized they both have blue in them, right? The title, I didn't even think of that. And then he, obviously does this movie, and so so these guys, their careers progressing.
Hey, you take a guy like Tom Hanks who started off on a really silly sitcom a long time ago.
Oh,
wearing dresses.
Yeah. And look at him now. I'm not going to go any place in the world with him because, he's been in a couple of plane crashes, a spaceship accident. He's been on a ship that's been hijacked. So I'm not traveling with him. But there's several actors that you do see that as they started off as just nobodies. Next thing you know, they're somebody. So.
Yeah, you never know what's going to break your career. So, Martine, seeing these young guys, so you recognize this guy right away, right? When you saw him?
Oh yeah.
Anything else that you can recall that he was in? I actually.
Yes, he was the replacement for Agent Mulder on X-Files in the last season before the reboot. He was on a. Oh my God! I think the show was called The Outfit. I think I don't remember exactly. It was a military show. And most recently he has been on. Ooh,
I just pulled him up.
This DC comics based show that I love. But well, I'm forgetting every name now. It's with John Cena. He was one of the villains again.
again.
And I think he was on Richard too, playing
He's
again.
he,
I
he's
mean-
I just pulled him up. So Last Action Hero, Fire in the Sky. I don't remember that. Striptease, Copland. So he was the
Yes,
orbital
he was
scrub
in
cops.
Copland.
He was in that one. He gets shot by Sylvester Stallone at kind of the climactic scene when he ends up shooting it out with those guys. And see the Faculty Spy Kids, Charlie's Angels Full Throttle, Ladder 34, Walk the Line, Flags of Our Fathers. So that was that the Clint Eastwood one?
The Clint Eastwood one.
Was that Okinawa or I can't remember what island that they were taking on, but so he's actually done a lot of really good movie. Here he is, X-Files as Colonel Tom Ryan. So as you were talking about, The Outer Limits. He was in Sopranos. I can't think of what part he played in Sopranos, but so he's a busy character actor. Made a good career for himself. Good for him. But we see him as a young mercenary in this movie, right? So, I have to talk about. We're at the point with the meeting where they've tried to communicate with their planes, right? The tower, our hero engineer tries to manipulate a way to communicate, and the terrorists figure it out. And so they decide they're going to send a message and they're going to crash a plane, right? And this is the scene where, as you talk about, John McClane or Bruce Willis is running down, and he's got the lit, he's trying to do something, right? And he's trying to wave off the plane.
Kerosene-soaked clots or something.
And our terrorists have taken over the flight control systems, and they're bringing in a plane to land, and knowing that it's off by 200 feet, so they're going to crash, right? That's what's going to happen. Now, here's the thing, Martine, the plane crashes, it goes up in a fireball, and they say before they're coming down, we're on fumes. That's not going to happen. If you don't have any, it's going to tumble and roll, and there's going to be a lot of stuff. There might be a little fire, but it's not going to go up in a fireball. So that's Hollywood, that's Hollywood. It's not going to go up like that if you're empty, right? You're going to have a little bit of a flash, but burning ain't what's going to kill you. It's going to be the hard landing or the gravity that'll kill you. So right, so this is Hollywood.
Yeah.
Cars explode too in Hollywood, which I've never seen.
I know.
Explode.
And then always explode in crashes too, right? But
yeah.
So I mean, that's what I was thinking. Okay, it's a lot of fuel. There's no fuel on board. That ain't gonna, And I will, I'll. So okay, of all these things I did in my career, one of the things I was sent to how to deal with airplane crash disasters. Why they sent me, I have no freaking idea. I think I was a deputy, but I was, they said, oh, we got to send somebody. I was doing that disaster preparedness stuff. I think it was part of, how you got that, you got each station has their own emergency command. So I was part of, they said, well, we got to send somebody. Let's send Jordan. So I go to this 3-day class on how to handle plane crashes. And then, so they talk about that, empty plane, fuel, what's going to happen. And I won't get into the grisly details of what actually happens to a body. Is that me doing that?
What were you hearing?
That's my wife. I'm on her, she's got her thing linked up, so I get these phone calls every now and then. But yeah, so let me tell you what happens if you are a pilot and you're going to crash and you got no place to land. They are instructed to do what they call pancaking. So pancaking is you're flying, you can't find a place to land, and you're in an urban area. So your goal is to minimize the amount of the impacted area by pancaking. So you fly your plane straight into the ground. So you limit the size of the disaster. You pancake. That's what they call it. Wow, right? Could you imagine being the pilot and in the air and okay, I'm losing power, I'm going to crash, I got no place to land, and I got a pancake with 200 people in the back here, nobody's going to survive that. But yeah, did you ever hear that before?
No,
I haven't, but that's interesting.
That's interesting. So, well, okay, you learn to hear first on Morning Coffee with the Chief what happens if you're flying a plane, you know you're going to crash, and you got no place to land, and you
Was this
pancake. In an urban environment, you pancake.
yeah, was this class after Cerritos?
It was.
Okay.
Yeah, it was.
It's
Yeah.
probably a result of Cerritos. So.
Yeah, that's probably why I got sent there. Cerritos is a very spectacular plane crash that occurred in the county of Los Angeles, 78-ish, 82-ish. I can't remember
It
when.
was in the mid 80s.
Mid 80s. Okay.
Yeah, I was in mid to late 80s. I was at East LA at the time, and I'd seen just a small twin engine airplane with 6 people on it that pancaked out in the Antelope Valley, and there were body parts all over the place. So
yeah, it's not. You're not.
That's what would have happened. That's what would have happened in this accident too at Dulles or that crash. There would just
there was one
not
crash.
Not so much fire, but a lot of body parts.
They went over. Yeah, there ain't no recovery there. There's one. I think it was up in Santa Barbara. A guy got into. He was a employee was fired, but he still had the ability to get through security. He had a gun. He took over the cockpit.
Yep, Air California.
And he pancaked and killed everybody. I think the guy's name was Burke. It was his last name, but yeah. And we went over that, and they talked about what happens to the human body. Really, I don't think they needed to get into detail, but they did.
Yeah, I remember that crash. That was an Air California crash, and a lot of the things we're talking about, even at this movie, we also have to remember this was before 9/11. This was before TSA, and back before 9/11, airport security or airline security was put on by the airlines. So whomever got through it could be like a really good agent or airline that has tough security rules, or you could get into a smaller regional flight like Air California was back in the day, and they had lax security.
Absolutely. Well, let's roll to the next scene, and this is the ejector seat scene and the North Korean grenade scene, right? So I bring that up, and it's, you're right. Both of you are right. So he gets in, he tries to take the general captive. The general lands, and he goes there and he captures him, and he ends up shooting him in the arm. But then the mercenaries come, and they know who he is. That's the other thing. Everybody knows who John McClane is, right?
He was on late night TV after the first.
Yeah,
everybody knows who he is, right? Oh,
he wasn't on TV, on the press, everything.
Everybody knows who he is. He's the hero of the Nakatomi whatever towers. Nakatomi Towers.
That's okay. I couldn't pronounce it either.
He's John McClane, right? And they all know he is, and this is their chance to kill him. And they shoot up the cockpit, and they throw in the grenades. Yeah, and you're right. I didn't even catch that. I was thinking, ejector seat. I mean, normally it's like a 3 or 4 second delay on these hand grenades, and so Russia is getting its munition from North Korea now. I don't know if you guys are following the Ukraine thing. I listen to a podcaster every day who goes over what's going on there, because sometimes I'll talk about it on my show. I'll talk a little bit of stuff on the other show, and a lot of their munitions are not well produced, so they're firing short, or they're not firing at all. They're duds. So that's why I call them North Korean grenades. A very realistic nod. It's lazy script writing. Okay, thanks, Tom. I have to agree with you, and certainly I think the panel agrees with you. And let's see. And too many stupid twists. Okay, Tom. Hey, Martine, you want to add to that?
Yeah, he's not wrong. However, even though I know how absurd is the notion of the scene with the ejector seat, I always look for that part when I'm watching this movie. Looks good.
Well,
it's funny. It's a funny scene.
It's a funny scene. Yeah, how does he get out of it? So they got to create this. And thank you, Tom, for welcome to the show. And it's
so, Chief, and I'm going to ask my friend who's a C-130 driver where the ejection seat is on the C-130s that he flies.
He's gonna tell you in the cargo bay in a cargo crate.
Exactly.
He's going to say, "Oh no, we were taught to pancake. We don't get to eject, just pancake, whatever." So, but okay, so on the first show, there's always a lot of fun quips, right? And so, and after this whole ejector seat thing, he says, you're in the wrong place. Let's see, you, me, the wrong guy at the wrong place at the wrong time. That's what McClane is saying about himself, right? And the wrong guy at the wrong place at the wrong time. A la back to Die Hard 1, right? How did I get it? What was this famous line from Die Hard 2? Come out to the coast, have a few drinks, have a good time. That's what he said. So he's like, how am I here? And there's a nice line at the end of the movie where his wife says that, how does this keep happening to us? What is going on? But yeah, that was an unrealistic scene, right? The whole ejector seat on the 130. Here we go. This is still part of this. I thought this place was secured. So they're going to the church now, right? Or no, they got him out. Yeah, no, they're going to the, he's in the cockpit. This is where they're going to blow him up. Yeah. He's going to hell, McClane. I assume it is you, McClane. Yeah, that's, even this guy knows who he is. I was like, okay, I don't know. A narcissist like the Colonel here, I don't think he's paying attention to names unless he wants to compete with them. So,
well, yeah, that's
that was his counter surveillance.
Yeah, well, calling surveillance on your enemy, yeah, but so we got these two. McClane's not nuts. He just is willing to go along with. What does he say? I don't like to lose. That's what he says later on.
Right. Yeah.
I don't like to lose.
I hate to lose or something.
I hate to lose, even against these guys, even if it's going to cost me a life. I hate to lose. And
that's
how many grenades we got?
That's when they're in the chopper trying to catch the plane, and it's I hate flying, and the pilot said, "Then why you are here? Because I hate losing too."
There it is funny when he says, "Get in front of the plane." Are you freaking nuts? I'm not doing that. Yeah. So somebody with some common sense says something, but yeah, this is the escapist movie that is hard to believe, right? So. And so after the scene, they begin to realize, okay, these guys are close, right? I mean, here's the grenades rolling in there. I guess we got to see the ejector seat scene is in this part, right? Is that the grenades?
Yes,
those
are the grenades.
There's the grenades, and you're right. It's like it takes the longest time for him to get off the floor and get in the seat to get out of there, right?
He gets up the floor, gets into the seat, then he buckles in a 5-point harness, reaches for the thing, pulls the handle, and still waits another couple of seconds.
Yeah, and if you are paying attention, we did tests on train glass and stuff like that. The glass on the cockpit ain't going to shatter like that too. That's going to be, you might have some puncture holes, but it will maintain a lot of its integrity.
Yeah, it'll be safety
because
glass.
It's designed to withhold a lot of pressure, right? So it's not going to go like that too. So Tom is right. Tom Baker's right. Lazy script writing, but hey, that's Hollywood, right? I mean, they already got a big hit with Die Hard 1. They just need to make it close, it'll be good enough. Here's the explosion as well. And here's the other thing: if there's a lot of fuel, there's not going to have that kind of big explosion like that. We're not going to have this big fireball. But hey, this is Hollywood.
We love big explosions in Hollywood.
Yeah, and here's the Colonel says, "God, what does he say?" I think he says "lucky bastard" or whatever he says, because he sees them, but they can't wait around because the cops are coming. You lucky bastard. I think he says that. Fire trucks we got to get out of there. All right, so
let's go with the fire trucks for a second. This is one of the funniest parts of the movie. Every time they show a fire truck, they're rolling red lights and siren down a runway where there's nobody yet. Blasting the sirens. It's like, really? You don't need to do that. There's nobody there.
Yeah, and these guys had a busy night. They had the one plane crash. Now that this going on, they're going back and forth. They have just a very small contingent on the airport, right? And then everybody else is coming from everywhere else. And if you're in a whiteout, they ain't coming fast. That's
Yeah.
for sure. So, it's since I grew up in Michigan. I mean, I can tell you. So I grew up in Michigan, and there are times in a whiteout, just driving down my street, you might end up with two ruts in your street, and you get this. If one guy won't get out, because what you do is then you slide over and you keep, your front and back tire, one of your front and back tires in the rut, and they slide over, and that's how you get past. But if you have somebody who panics, who won't do that, now you got this Mexican standoff. I shouldn't call that. That's probably derogatory, but you got the standoff where you can't go anywhere, and that when you're getting a whiteout, that's what it's like. And guess what? Trucks don't move around that quickly and that stuff either, right? They got to
Right.
put firemen got to slide down their pole. They got to put the chains on the back tire. Got to get a cup of coffee, and then they start rolling out here.
And I gotta go to the bathroom too.
They got to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
No offense to my firefighter friends out there, but all right, let's roll the next scene. Roger and the church, I think, is what I labeled this thing. So obviously McClane, he's doing his deductive reasoning. He's thinking, well, these guys got to be close because they got here fast. And he's talking to us. The bad guys would burn down a mansion to kill a mouse. Yeah. Yeah. All right, Tom, you're pretty funny. I don't think you've been on my show before, but that's pretty funny. Yes.
He's very funny.
Well, they'll burn down a mansion to you get more butts in the theater, right? Now that's in these movies, but and that's why when you have cops doing this, okay, that's not realistic. That's not going to happen. I mean, can you imagine how much paperwork you have to write when you shoot your gun? And when you shoot this many people, I mean, they'd have you cubbied off somewhere. That the left would say, "Oh my God, you got in 3 shootings. We got to put you in a tower somewhere, never to see the light of day again." That's the way it is these days. But
They closed that part of BC down.
oh, you know what I mean? Now, I mean, okay. Well, I won't say where I read this, but they're thinking about enacting a rule because I got this on. This is so they want if you are in the top 25% of force, they want you're not allowed to train anybody. This is a rule that they're thinking about, and if you understand the dynamics of police work, and you'll understand this, Danny, if I choose to, let's say I love patrol, and I decide I'm going to spend my whole career in patrol. After about 15 years, even just a mild patrol guy, just a moderate patrol, I'm going to be in that top 25% because I'm going to be getting enforced all the time, particularly if I'm working at night, right? All the drunks and all that other stuff. You're going to be in that just because you're working. So the concept is well, the leftists will believe, well, if you're in the top 25%, then there's a problem with you, without looking at the context of why you might be there. And so they're saying, well, we don't want the most experienced guy who might be in the top 25% training anybody. Yet the only reason the person is there is because he's the most experienced guy handling more situations than other people. They'd rather have the house mouse, borrowing a term from NYPD, train people on how to avoid force than the guy who deals with it on a day-to-day basis. I'm just throwing it out there, but that's kind of the crazy rules that are going on. So McClane, he'd have been benched. He'd have been Die Hard 1. He'd have never seen the street again. They'd have handcuffed him to a desk. That was it, right? That's what's going on these days.
He'd still be in New York.
Yeah, that's right. They never hired him in LA and in LA. So, but here they do figure out that there's we got our engineer who says, hey, there's a church nearby, and I don't think I show this, but he also figures out that there's a communication system that communicates the outer edge of the airport, and that he can harness that to communicate with the planes. And then they're beginning to do that. That's what I really like about these guys who know their systems. They figure out that there's options. They do show that here. McClane's not the only hero. There's this whole team of heroes, and that's probably the one difference between this story and the first story. The McClane was the hero, and this story you got multiple people who are heroes, and they figure out how to communicate with the plane. And he says, hey, if they're going to do this, they're going to be at probably this old church, and so they go to this old church and try to take these guys down. Martine, any comments regarding this scene?
Ah,
Lazy script
so-
writing here.
no, the way they deduct where they are is believable, but man, I think they they put McLean in so many and so long fights that at some point, well, you cannot believe that guy has that stamina. That this fight should have been, in my opinion, a lot shorter.
Well, I can't think of
Uh,
a lieutenant on our department that would go through all this. He'd be in traction after, the first fight scene, right? He'd have been done after the luggage scene.
yeah, fights are not how Hollywood portrayed them. fights
No.
are painful, are really painful.
Yeah, even if you win.
Yes.
After watching some of the documentaries I've been on Afghanistan and Iraq, it's amazing how resilient the human body is. Because I was watching this one documentary where this small team of 5 soldiers had to jump off a 35-foot cliff and got beat up all the way down. And fortunately, they didn't break anything, and they got back up and went and did their job. And this was true.
Right.
Even the cameraman from the documentary had to jump. So you are resilient, but I don't think you'd make that many beatings in a night.
No, not at all. And but this is also the time, obviously they telegraph a lot of things in these movies, and you don't see it right away, but after you watched it once or twice, you know it. And in this case, you see these guys have their magazines set up that one side is red and one side is blue, and of course blue is the blanks, and all of our good guys are supposed good guys with let's see, John Olmos or Major Grant. They switch to blue as they're doing this attack on the church, and they have this, what ultimately becomes a fictitious gunfight.
Yeah.
And these bad guys get away, and of course, Colonel Stewart is saying to our general, "See, hey, it's all planned, not a problem. We got it all worked out. All these contingencies are worked out." And for the most part, he's right. And McLean is the monkey in the wrench, to borrow a term from Die Hard 1. And what is it? The soup and the fly. I forget all the little things that he said. And the monkey and the wrench, the soup and the fly, whatever. But he's their pain.
Soup, isn't it?
It's just the fly on the ointment.
The fly in the ointment.
I have never heard that except for
except for the movie, right?
yes.
But he also ends up chasing him on the snowmobile. So I'm gonna go back to my Michigan days. Now let me tell you something. If you're on a snowmobile and you don't have any gloves on, you're gonna last about a minute, and then it's you're gonna go into the fetal position to try and warm your hands up and everything else up. If you're going like 25 miles an hour and it's cold and it's wet and it's snowing, you ain't gonna last unless you got all the right equipment on. And John McClane doesn't have all the right equipment on, but that kind of throws back to the first one where he doesn't have his shoes on, right? And now, but hey, he's John McClane, right? But as I was watching that, I'm going, oh, people don't understand. I went through a winter survival course as a Boy Scout and said, what the hell am I doing? It was in January. We're learning how to, if somebody falls through the ice, use a ladder to get out there and save them, and how to make a fire with wool and a flint. And I said, I don't even like this. I guess that. So you get cold. You get cold. And so moving to California, I cannot be in any special. It has to be okay. I don't mind roughing it. It's just got to be 70 degrees out. Don't get below 50. And yeah. So I was watching them on these snowmobiles, and it was no way. Now here's the next scene. I would have shot John McClane. So he's in this battle scene. He's chasing these guys down. He gets away. They get away. He realizes it's blanks in the gun, and he goes back to Carmine's office. And Carmine's still kind of being a little bit of a, for lack of a better word, a pissant, right? So he's kind of pushing, and here he is, and he's pushing back. Oh, they're arguing back and forth, and McClane steps back, and he lets loose with these blanks and his machine gun. And did you notice the backdrop? Like 3 or 4 guys got their guns
Yeah.
pointed at McLean.
Actually, one
Nobody
guy next to
shoots.
McLean had his gun out
Yeah, and I'm thinking to myself, why didn't they shoot? I'd have shot him, right? You know,
because the script said not to.
the script said not to. Yeah, yeah. So we're gonna follow Tom's lead here. Yes, lazy script writing. I'd have shot him. I was thinking, why did they shoot him? I'd have shot him. I mean, he's shooting a machine gun at my boss. I'd have shot him. And you don't, obviously, we know the dynamics of shooting. You don't recognize that it's really not a threat immediately, right? It takes a while for your cognitive abilities to figure out that it's blanks, right? But he'd have been dead had I been in that room.
Yeah,
What do you think? Same thing, right?
exactly. I thought the same thing. No, this is BS because every cop in there would have blown him up. So
What I and now our guy here now realizes, but I don't know if you guys notice, right after he does that, our actor here, Carmine, he's actually shaking, and I'm wondering myself, I wonder if they told him that was going to happen, right? Because if you watch him, he's actually, I don't know, Martine, if you caught this, but he's actually shaking. Now, either that's really good acting,
Yeah.
or they didn't give him a heads up that was going to happen, right?
Well, blanks tends to be really loud, so maybe the actor is just still processing, because there's people that with that kind of sounds they're still having a mild shock.
Right. Well, I just thought, wow, that was really good how he did that, and of course the cavalry is going to come to town. They're gonna, he's gonna, what's his name? So he's got a SWAT team, gather everybody in a hangar. I guess he's going to brief them. This is Carmine, and they're going to go look for the terrorist. Hey, you're already in the middle of this. So I was listening to him. I go, you're already in the middle of this, dude, man. You got to start getting resources in key places right now. But that's what they did, and then they go outside to get in the car, and they get, of course, stuck in traffic because it's a snowy Christmas Eve, and there's all kinds of traffic. There's a blood clot, and here's this other theme of this. Here's our actor, our television guy. Here's the other thing. So he's got a piece of equipment that can, in the plane, that can hear what's going on. So you have to do all these leaps of faith that any of this stuff can happen. And he locks himself in the bathroom, and he's giving a live report of what's really happening. And I will tell you, when you're dealing with the media and they want the real story, but it impacts, people's lives, unfortunately, they will back off. They will work with you if they recognize there's a problem, right? So this is a little unrealistic, but it makes for good movie making. Most legitimate news people will look at, am I going to cause harm? If I am, I'm going to step back, right? He'll gather information so he could be first on the story, but that, so that was unrealistic.
Yeah, but they have established that this character is a
I know. It's a throwback to the first one.
He doesn't care, but somebody in the station will have cared. They would have been recording him, but not letting him go to on air.
He wouldn't have been live
in real time.
Yeah.
No.
And of course, Holly, she gets to zap him. Now, she punched him in the end of the last movie, right? And she gets to zap him in the porta potty with her taser in this one, which is kind of fun. Then he kind of goes into kind of compliant mode. Our guy here. It's funny, when he gets on the plane, he says there's a restraining order against her, against him. I don't think that would. I think a judge would have thrown that out. But of course, there's nothing to do about it. It's on a plane. You can get off the plane. She doesn't have to get off the plane. But so they brought that. They leaked back to the first Die Hard 2 with it. What'd you think, Danny? Do you agree with me on the whole news thing? They will be responsible most of the time.
Yeah. How many times have we seen the news where you got to jump around on a bridge or something really bad's going on? You'll watch them. They'll pull the camera back or pull the footage back so you can't see what's really happening. They'll give you a large overview instead of a pinpoint section, which is highly respectful. And every news person I've ever met or been interviewed with, they've been very respectful of what we do and the mission of law enforcement. And even on the fire side, the news guys will follow the lead of the PIOs on there, or the public information officers. So these guys are, that was professional. Now, I get a kick out of it, but Hollywood they came up with a radio device that hadn't been invented yet. Just to be able to get into all of these different frequencies. I mean, we worked for the largest sheriff's department in the world with a budget of $3.2 billion. And we had radios that you couldn't talk to someone across the street.
Yeah.
So, and so Hollywood came up with this, really invented something that hadn't been invented yet.
I was working on grants, and we were looking at interoperability for the region. And I have to tell you, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to do the things that they wanted to do, and like 600 million. And it was just to create interoperability so that we could talk to everybody on any frequency, right? So huge amounts of money for those things to happen. And so you got a little TV station that's, even if a national station there, it's,
They had an outrageous budget, obviously.
Yeah. Okay, we're on our scene. I don't like to fly, but I don't like to lose. Let's roll that scene. This is the wing fight scene. So he says that. So the wing fight scene, and I thought this was one of the coolest parts of the movie, is the wing fight. Unrealistic, of course, but they're on the wing. They're trying to take off. John McClane has stuffed his jacket into the wing flap so they can't take off. And of course, our general's the one who's flying. That unrealistic there too. And John almost goes out to take him out, and they have a fight on the wing. Unrealistic, very entertaining. But what happens to John Olmos? He ends up in the engine, right? And he comes out the backside, and but that would have done it for that plane, in my mind. I mean, you get a bird strike at those engines.
Yeah, that engine is gone.
It's toast. You ain't taking off now. I mean, if a few birds will take you out, putting a 230-pound man through there, and the thing about him, he played football. Did you know he played some pro football? This guy, yeah. You put that through there. I'm sorry, his left molar is going to lock up those spinning blades inside that engine. It's gonna happen. But hey, again, this is Hollywood, and we'll go with Tom Baker's just lazy script writing, but entertaining. And what you think? You think of the fight scene on the wing was with John Olmos? What'd you think of that, Danny?
It was fun because the takeoff speed. I just googled it. Takeoff speed on a 747 is roughly 184 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So, it's really hard to even think of these guys at taxi speeds of 30 or 40 miles an hour fighting on a wing, but on an icy wing at that, because they didn't show that the plane had been de-iced.
Well, he had a great comment when he's dispatching Major Grant. Major Grant says, "I kind of like you, McClane," and McClane says, "I've got enough friends."
Yeah, I like that.
So I don't think they had as many good quips in this movie as they had in the first one, but that one was a pretty good. I got enough friends. I don't need any more, right? But I kind of like you. I have enough friends. Yeah. So, but once John loses here, or Major Grant loses, John almost loses. Our colonel comes out to finish off Mr. McClane, and of course, it's all a knife. I mean, I think they did try to shoot him, but it's all a knife fight is what they're doing here. It's hands and knives, which is very entertaining. But ultimately, he does kick John McClane off the wing. But John, as he's getting choked out, he sees the fuel release, right? I don't even know if they have these on these planes, but he sees the fuel release, and he pulls that, and as he kicks off the plane, fuel is beginning to drop in the wing, but it's dropping on the runway, and of course he sets it on fire, and that's the climactic scene. Another fireball, I think it probably is realistic if you have highly concentration gas. It can follow the path like that, and go up the pathway to the plane and blow up the plane, right? But so realistic, Danny? I don't know. What do you think?
Go out to your barbecue today with some lighter fluid and squirt it on and see if it happens.
Yeah, that happens.
I think it'll happen. In that, if during the fight with John Amos is where he first saw the handhold or the door for the fuel shut off, and he kind of remembered that part. And I'm thinking that in the movie, I've seen it a couple of times, and I'm watching it again. I'm going, at what part does he grab that? How does he do that again? So,
right, it's a second fight. that he gets
It's
into.
part of that would be realistic, but as far as enough fuel being on the runway to land 30 airplanes, I don't think so.
What do you
And-
think of this the scene, Martine?
Yeah, the plane was moving way too slow, and I don't see. Well, maybe I don't know. But, the Coronel character, instead of just shoot the guy, no, he decides to placate his hatred for him and say, "No, I'm gonna hurt you with my hands. No, shoot him."
It's more dramatic to fight. People like watching fights.
Hey, that's Hollywood. That is
Yeah.
Hollywood.
Yeah, and I don't know the hydraulic actuators of an aileron. I don't see them having much trouble with a freaking jacket jammed in. I don't think that could impede the plane to take off. But again,
On a
Hollywood.
smaller plane, maybe, not on a
it's Hollywood,
737.
baby. At least it was in bubblegum this time.
Right, right.
And one
Well,
of the
it's-
things you need to remember about, or people probably don't know, Dulles Airport, I was there in 1977, and it does not have terminals. They have one huge building where you check in and everything like that. And I don't know what it's at since 9/11, but they had these huge people movers that would haul out 150, 200 people at a time out to the tarmac area.
Yeah.
And then you'd load onto the airplane from there and then back. So that's why they would have such a huge parking lot for airplanes. Because that's how they did their business. You know, you talk about cold, Pat, on January 20th, 1977 was one of the coldest days of my life. I was standing on a block of ice because it was an ice storm in Washington, D.C., behind the Capitol building when Jimmy Carter was getting sworn in as president, freezing every bone in my body off.
Were you a fan, or were you sent there as?
I was
security?
a military police in the Army and stationed right outside of D.C.
I know you voted for Carter, right?
I don't even know who he is. No, I don't think so.
So John McClane, of course, he's got his handy dandy lighter because he smokes, and he throws the Zippo lighter on this line of fuel, and it lights up, and it goes all the way up the plane. And of course, I liked the scene how they showed the fireball coming, and you see all the guys on the plane and their reaction to it, and they know they're going to die. And I thought that was pretty good. And what does he say? Yippee-ki-yay.
Yippee-ki-yay.
MF.
The only line I remember of the movie. Yippee-ki-yay.
So tell Gary I still didn't swear, even though that's quoting the movie. So yippee-ki-yay. And here he is. He lights it up. This is the pathway that the airplanes who've been circling around the airport, who are low on fuel, they see that and they're coming down, and they follow the fire pathway, probably pretty unrealistic to get down. And of course, the terrorists don't. They wire the secondary whatever the tower they took over so they can't be used, and so they're okay with all these people dying. But the planes all start landing, and all I was thinking was, where are they going to put these planes? You know, you got I think what they said was 18 planes in the air that got to land down there, and they're just following this line of fire. But I have to say, you can roll right into the next scene, Martine, when this is Holly's plane lands, all these other planes are landing. Just roll right into the next scene, and our hero John McClane is yelling, "Holly, Jenner." All I could think of was Rocky yelling, "Adrian, Adrian." That's all I could think of. Oh my God, Adrian, and that's what I thought of when I saw the movie. And Rocky predated this, right? So that would have. I don't know if you got that feeling. That's what I thought. Bloodied, bruised, beat up, and yo Adrian or yo Holly. That would have been funny if he'd done yo Holly instead of you. That I don't know. Did you think that, Martina? I mean, you probably do now that I laid it out for you.
But I think it would. Maybe somebody thought about that and somebody said, "No, that is too much. Leave out the yo."
Didn't even see that one coming.
Well, yeah, right. Now that you think of it, you're thinking of it that way, right? And And what did she say? They told us they were terrorists. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I heard that too. Yeah.
And I like her. She had a great her comment at the end was really good. John, why does this keep happening to us? You know,
Because
pretty
the
funny
writers
comment.
hate us.
Because the writers hate us, right? Yeah. So
Because
yeah,
it's Christmas.
so it's good, entertaining movie. I will say I wrote down because I checked that airport thing out. I forget who said it. Alpena County Airport in Michigan is where they did the primary shooting, and it's Concutchleo Air Force Base, also in Michigan, and they did the church scene was actually in Colorado. So they were originally going to film this all in Colorado at the airport and at the church, but not enough snow in Colorado. So they, of course, they go to the Old Faithful for snow, Michigan, in the wintertime to film it there. Well, you guys, a good show, right? And fun show.
Fun show, Chief. That was had a good time. Thank you.
Did you watch it with your wife, or do you guys watch it together?
No, I watched it by myself. We've seen it together a couple other times.
Yeah.
And this time, just as I have a stationary bike, so as I'm riding it, I'm watching the movie.
Yeah, Penny Bonnie is great in this movie, and she had some. I think she had some of the best lines at the end. Why does this, John? Why does this keep happening to us?
Oh, when she tases the reporter, he's saying, and if this is my last broadcasting, and then she's stopping and say, "Oh, good words."
Of course.
Something like that. Please let it be the last one.
At the end, when the news reporter's laying on the ground like a little weenie going, help me. And the older lady with just in her nylons walks by and calls him an out. I kind of was hoping she'd chest stop him or something.
And of course, the fire truck. There's your lady. The fire trucks come again. You know, I'm like, where the hell are they getting all these fire trucks? You know, so. But, you know, they don't, you know, other than the fire jacket, you know, because McClane has a jacket that he said, that's actually a turnout, kind of a turnout jacket, right, that he had there.
They're not that warm.
Yeah, they're not, they're not really. Chief, and hey, thank you, Penny. Hey, have a good Thanksgiving, Penny. And to all the folks who joined us, have a good Thanksgiving. We are at the end of our show. I think we'll just let this one run out, and then we'll just finish. Here's our guy, Carmen. He's kind of kissed and made up with John McClane. Now he's back into the world of doing policing instead of administering. You know,
tearing up the parking ticket.
Tearing up, that was tearing up the parking ticket. And there he is saying, "Yeah, I got a ticket," and he tears it up. So, and they make up and kind of kiss, so to speak, here by tearing up the ticket.
Yeah, car's still impounded, though.
The car's still impounded. I'm sure he'll get a ride there, you know, if they can get through traffic. So, but hey,
now we can all go and contact the chief of LAX police, Cecil Ramble, and ask him, "Hey, Cecil, is this how you run your airport?" He'll probably throw you out the office.
I partnered with somebody who was running against him, and we took Cecil down. When he was running for sheriff.
Yeah,
I won't get into the details, but it was a takedown. Well, so I'll have to tell that story another day when I do a political thriller. I'll invite you back, Danny. I'll tell you how Matt Rodriguez and I took him down as he was seeking the Democratic nomination for sheriff. He probably wouldn't shake my hand if he saw me in the future, but hey, so. Anyways, hey, thank you for joining me on the show, Martine, for stepping up. Danny, thank you for joining me again.
Thank you very much.
And have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
You too, Martine. I know you're in Mexico,
Thank you.
but and they don't celebrate Thanksgiving there, but we're thankful for everything you do too. So, and Pat, you have a great Thanksgiving also.
All right, guys. All right, Martine, we are ready. You can take it away.
Okay, see you. Oh, wait.
Thank you.